In this video, you'll learn about displaying a message box in an Excel application, selecting a button style, and testing a message box. This photo collection workbook is designed for people who purchase photos as an investment or hobby and want to keep track of the purchases. In the Purchases worksheet, users enter the purchase date and the type, such as from an online auction. They also enter a description, such as the name of the photo and the purchase price. Then they click the Add Purchase button to add the purchase information to the account worksheet, which displays the total dollar amount of the purchases. Behind the scenes, Excel runs the Insert Purchase macro when the Add Purchase button is clicked. The macro checks to make sure the value entered in cell B6 of the Purchases worksheet is greater than 0. If it is, the macro inserts the purchase information in the account worksheet and then clears the transaction entries in the Purchases worksheet. But if users do not enter a purchase price in cell B6 or enter 0 or a negative value, the macro does nothing, and the purchase information is not entered in the account worksheet. It would be much more helpful to display an error message advising users to enter a value greater than 0. To do so, you can create a message box, which is a simple dialog box that displays a message and allows the user to click OK. To create a message box, you use the message box function, which has the syntax shown here. In the syntax, prompt is the message you want to display in the message box. The message can confirm an action, ask a question, or identify valid values to enter, for example. The Buttons parameter specifies the kind of buttons that appear in the message box and the style of the message box itself. The message box function can display many types of buttons and message box styles. For example, if you use VB OK only as the Buttons parameter, a message box with an OK button is displayed. Use VB OK Cancel as the Buttons parameter to display a similar message box with an OK button and a Cancel button. Use VB Critical as the Buttons parameter to display a message box with a critical icon and an OK button. You can also display message boxes with question, warning, and information icons. To help you select the right type of message box, the Visual Basic Editor displays a description box as you enter the message box function. After the Buttons parameter comes the title, which is the text that appears in the title bar of the message box. For example, this message box has the title Invalid Entry to indicate that an invalid purchase price was entered. You can use the message box function as part of the if-then-else control structure in the VBA code for a macro. For example, in this code for the Insert Purchase macro, the if-then statement sets the first condition, what the macro does when users enter a value greater than 0. It turns off screen updating to hide the operation of the macro, inserts cells in the account worksheet for the new data, inserts the purchase information in the account worksheet, empties the transaction cells in the Purchases worksheet, and then turns on screen updating again. The else statement sets the second condition, what the macro does when users enter an invalid value or no value, which is the same as entering 0. In this case, the macro runs the endIf and endSub statements, which end the macro without making any changes. The green comment line shows where you can insert the message box function to display a message box explaining that users should enter a value greater than 0. You can use the code shown here. If users enter an invalid purchase price, this code displays a message box. The prompt text is "Please enter a purchase price greater than 0. Because the message box is reporting a user error, You can use the VB Critical button style. The title bar text is invalid entry. Because the Insert Purchase macro is attached to the Add Purchase button, when users now enter an invalid purchase price and then click this button, they see a message requesting that they enter a valid value. Keep in mind that you can display a message to users by creating a message box. Use the message box function to specify the message text, button style, and title bar text. Use the message box function as part of the if-then-else control structure in the VBA code for a macro button to guide users to enter valid values.